Yeah, welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast Live. Yes. As you can see, it's just me. My guys are not with me tonight, so I'm gonna do this on my own. It's been a while since I've done a live show by myself, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that. But I'm gonna give a little bit of time before we go ahead and get started. I see there's nobody in the chat, so I'm gonna chill for a few minutes and see what we got going on. Just saw one pop up. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you. But yeah, just hang out a few minutes and see what we got. See if we get some more people come in before we get it started. Just gonna do a couple of topics tonight, as you can see. Definitely gonna talk about Michigan and what they got going on. Gonna talk about Julius Peppers and Michael Jordan. What does Julius Peppers have to do with Michael Jordan? Stick around and you'll see. Also, before we even get started on the main topics, we're gonna do some quick hits, and I'm gonna touch on some items in the world of sports, mainly some Olympic stuff. So I'm gonna get on that. But yeah, like I said, let me give it a few minutes and see what we got. See if we can get anything going. Get a little bit of traffic before we get started. All right. It's kind of different when you're here by yourself. When you get used to doing the show with a panel or a bunch of people, you kind of get away from the flow of doing the show live, just you. But we're gonna get back to it, man. We're gonna get back to it. This is nothing I can't handle. Did a little prep earlier, so definitely got some interesting thoughts to share, and look forward to doing that. Few more minutes. So those of you who are here, why don't you it's just a couple of you. Why don't you pop in the chat? Tell me where you're coming in from, and let's see what we got. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and put this on as well. All right. See a couple more people coming in, but all right, it's a little slow right now, but I guess I'm gonna go ahead and get it started. So like I said, we're gonna talk a little bit of Michigan, as you can see on the rundown, and then we're gonna talk about Julius Peppers and Michael Jordan, and you will find out shortly what Julius Peppers has to do with Michael Jordan and why we're gonna talk about the two of them. But before we get started, you know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please make sure you go ahead, click that like, that subscribe, that notification bell. Make sure you're kept up to date whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in The Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you give us that like, that 5-star review, and drop a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. And finally, make sure you write it down, put it in your phone, set an alarm, do whatever you got to do to remember. Saturday nights at 7 p.m. we are live here on the Format Podcast, and we'll give you the opportunity to call in, talk to us, get at me. I love it. I can't wait. All right, so I guess we're gonna go ahead and get started. So what I wanted to do is hit on a quick few topics before we actually get started with the main ones. We call these quick hits. So let's do that. So the first thing I wanted to do is, of course, I've been watching a ton of the Olympics over the last week and a half now, and they've been pretty entertaining on a lot of fronts, whether it's basketball, whether track and field, swimming, all that. So obviously the swimming and gymnastics, they were kind of like the main events early on, and now we're really into the meat of the Olympics, and a lot of basketball and a lot of track and field. And a lot of times track and field, especially the sprint events, are what people are generally waiting for. So the men's 100-meter, that's the first thing I want to touch on. So Noah Lyles wins the gold in the men's 100-meter. He's now the fastest man in the world, which, okay, technically he's the fastest man in the world because he won the Olympic 100-meter, right? But obviously we know Usain Bolt's still the fastest man in the world, because he got that 9.58 world record, which I think it's going to take some time before anybody touches that. I think Kushane Thompson from Jamaica, he had the fastest time in the world this year, like 9.76, 9.77. So I guess Usain Bolt is within reach. Now we've had guys run in the 9.6s before, not just Usain Bolt, but I think he's going to take some time before somebody really reaches that pinnacle and breaks that record, which was crazy because if you saw that 9.58, I think it was back in 2008 in Berlin at the World Championships when Usain Bolt broke it, he still wasn't actually like pressed. And I've always said that if somebody really pressed him in a race, he probably would have broken the 9.5 mark, which would have been absolutely insane because a lot of his greatest races and wins, you saw like he was running away from the field and actually slowed down towards the end. But anyway, Noah Lyles in what was probably the most thrilling final in men's 100-meter Olympic history. He won by 5 thousandths of 1 second by just leaning into the tape before Jamaica's Kashane Thompson. So shout out Noah Lyles. You are technically now the fastest man in the world. You are the Olympic 100-meter champion, and that comes with a lot of praise and a lot of gravitas. So shout out to you for that. Um, Next up in the track and field, we saw um, Julian Alfred from the island of St. Lucia. She won, I think she ran for Texas in college, but she won the women's 100-meter, and she's the fastest woman in the world. Again, she doesn't have the fastest time, but she's the Olympic champion, so she's kind of regarded as the fastest woman. And she beat out America's Sha'Carri Richardson, who took home silver. And, good for Sha'Carri. That was kind of a big comeback for her after missing the Tokyo Olympics with, we saw she had the issues where basically she peed hot marijuana after, some personal tragedy in her life, and she was smoking and she ended up being hot and getting kicked off the team and not being able to compete. And everyone was, up in arms about it. But realistically, I wasn't up in arms about it because I'm like, I know that you went through tough times, but the rules are the rules. You violated the rules. Now you got to deal with the repercussion. But Sha'Carri Richardson worked very hard. She continued to be herself and put the work in and be one of the best female sprinters in the world. Work her way back. Won the Olympic trials and represented our country very nicely in the Olympics and ended up coming in silver. And there's really no shame in that. Second fastest in the world, second best in a given event on this globe of 8 billion people. That's pretty impressive, right? So shout out Sha'Carri Richardson, ends up taking home the silver medal. So impressive there. Obviously in the swimming, we saw Katie Ledecky just continue to dominate. She's an absolute machine. I don't know if anybody watched that 1,500-meter. And she swam that 1,500 so fast that she was literally out of the pool celebrating and waving while the other competitors were still coming in. Like, that's how good she is. That's how dominant she is in that event, as well as the 800. So outstanding. She is our most decorated female Olympian ever now. So shouts to her. Katie Ledecky. So a lot of really good stuff going on in the Olympics. Very entertaining. Was Gabby Thomas, Harvard alum, and she won the women's 200-meter gold medal. So she broke up the opportunity for Julian Alfred to win the double. So Julian Alfred won the 100, but didn't get an opportunity to win the 200. She came in at silver, while Gabby Thomas of the United States won the gold medal. So shouts there. All right, Simone Biles. Simone Biles is arguably the greatest female gymnast of all time. She took away more medals. She's doing her thing. I mean, you just watch her, and it's absolutely incredible. So love to Simone Biles. She's 27 years old, and now what everyone is asking is she going to be able to will it up one more time for the 2028 Olympics, which I believe they're in Los Angeles, I believe. So she may be able to dig up one more go around, especially being that they're home in the United States. So let's look out for that. All right, so those are some quick hits on the Olympics. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, this is not an Olympic topic, but if you've been watching the show, we've done topics on boxing recently. And Canelo Alvarez, this is a dude that I've talked about in terms of him basically using the Floyd Mayweather Jr. model of trying to manipulate fights and manipulate opposition. And so we know that Terrence Bud Crawford has won championships at multiple weight classes, started out fighting at 135, came all the way up, won another championship the other night at 154. And he says he's willing to go all the way up to 168 for the opportunity to fight Canelo Alvarez, not necessarily just for the money, but why? Because he believes it is a legacy defining fight. And now we got a problem. We got a problem. So Saudi, I think he's a minister of sport or a royal court advisor in Saudi Arabia, Turkey Al Sheikh. He has been making a lot of big fights lately. You see hashtag Riyadh season when it comes to boxing. Riyadh being the capital of Saudi Arabia, but he's been making a lot of big fights. We saw him make the what was it, the Usyk and Tyson Fury fight, which was awesome, and now they're getting a rematch. But he's been making a lot of big fights, right? So he's trying to make this Canelo Alvarez Terrence Crawford fight. But guess what? We got a problem because Canelo Alvarez basically says he doesn't want the fight, right? So just here's an article that I got from MMA Junkie, and basically these sentiments have been echoed in other articles. You can look it up, right? So anyway, um, Turkey Al Sheikh says that his interest in Canelo Alvarez has come to an end, and Canelo Alvarez has responded, Crawford needs to fight Teofimo Lopez first, and then we'll see. Like I've said, at the end of the day, I'm not asking for that fight. They want to make that fight because it's a payday, obviously, but I don't want that fight. Teofimo deserves it more than me. My response to Turkey is this. Yesterday, they texted me and they said, we can talk about the fight in February with Crawford. They texted me yesterday. I said, look, I don't want to talk about any other fight. I'm focused 100% on this fight being the fight coming up in September with Edgar Berlanga. And then Canelo goes on to say, look, I don't like the way he talks. I'm not in this position because of anything. If he wants to work with me, it's my way, not their way. I don't need it. So Turkey Al Sheikh responds, and this was like, I never heard anyone go at Canelo like this. He says, I heard what Canelo said, that he respects me, but he doesn't like the way we do business. As for him respecting me, it doesn't matter to me if he does or not. As for the way I do business, I know why he doesn't like it, because I only target big fights at fair prices. So, of course, anyone who likes easy fights won't like that. And I know how he feels after losing to Bivol. That's light heavyweight champion Dmitry Bivol, who will be fighting Artur Beterbiev in, I think, November or December. But anyway, he says, and I know how he feels after losing to Bivol. So he's been looking for easier fights ever since. Also, I'm not the one who's afraid of fighting David Benavidez, or Terrence Crawford. Therefore, I knew he was wasting our time and making excuses with big amounts of money that can't be paid. So I'm continuing my way to make big fights that serve the boxing world, and he's on his way to making easy show-only fights. Now, if you watch this show, you've heard me talk about Canelo and how he left the zone because the zone was trying to get him to fight David Benavidez and he refused to do it. So he ducked that fight. You've heard me talk about how he tried to manipulate the Gennady Golovkin thing. He wasn't going to fight him at all. And then Triple G got in the ring and challenged him, kind of, put his Mexican machismo out there for the whole world to see, kind of forced him into accepting that fight. Then they fought. And then they fought the rematch, and then he waited 4 more years when Triple G was already about 5 years older than him to fight that fight. So, you see what Canelo does in terms of ducking guys or fighting guys when he wants to and trying to manipulate the opposition. And great fighters, warriors don't do that. They line them up and you fight them when you're supposed to fight them and let the chips fall where they may. And if you're the best, you'll beat them. And maybe sometimes it's not your day, but then you get a rematch, and maybe you do, maybe you don't. But the fact is, nobody can say that you ran from anyone, or no one can say that you manipulated the situation. So I love the fact that Turkey Al Sheikh called out Canelo Alvarez regarding this behavior. I love it because we see too much now, and we see it in multiple sports, guys making quote unquote business decisions, especially in what we call warrior sports. Now, should guys get paid? Absolutely. Should guys understand their worth? Absolutely. I totally get that. However, I hate that I hate what's up, young disciple. Pleasure to see you, man. And good to see you. Good to see you. Why you don't do shows every time someone says LeBron the GOAT? You know what? That's a good question. You can call me and we'll talk about that after we do the segment. All right. Big Scoop, what's good? What's good? But yeah, so I love the fact that Turkey Al Sheikh called out Canelo Alvarez, because it's about time that guys start getting called out for this behavior, man. Stop, especially if you're a fighter, like that's literally your job to go get in fights with people. So, stop running, stop hiding, stop trying to manipulate it. When they line them up, you fight them. That's all there is to it. And that's why I have so much more respect for that generation of, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, that generation of Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran and Marvin Hagler and Tommy Hitman Hearns. Like, I get it. The money back then was nowhere near what it was now. But I mean, if you look at it, even back then, the money they were making was huge money compared to the average man. But regardless, guys understood that there was something to be said for the legacy of fighting everybody you're supposed to fight when you're supposed to fight them. So, that's my thought. And those are the quick hits. Those quick hits lasted a little longer than I expected, but yeah, I just wanted to touch on those notes on different items from the sports world. And all right, let's get it going. All right, so Michigan, right? So obviously college football is coming. And just a quick note, if you were with me last college football season when we were doing shows, I think this is before I started doing the lives and taking the calls and all that, but I used to have my guy Ryan Langford with me, who his dad actually played at Penn State University under Joe Paterno, and then he played about 10 years in the league with the Miami Dolphins. And then Ryan, he played 4 years at the University of Illinois as a wide receiver, and then he played with the Indianapolis Colts for a season. Then he spent about 5 or 6 years in the Canadian Football League as a wide receiver and kick returner. So he was my college football analyst, and he will actually be back with me this season. So looking forward to having Ryan get back in here in a few weeks. And you'll see probably every Sunday or Monday night, he's going to be with us during the college football season discussing big storylines and big games and all that. So definitely looking forward to having him with me. But the reason I bring him up, as you know, the Michigan Wolverines, if you're a college football fan, Michigan Wolverines won the national championship last year under Coach Jim Harbaugh and assistant coach, offensive line coach, and uh, offensive coordinator Sharon Moore. There you see Sharon Moore hugging Jim Harbaugh. So they won the national championship last year, but the problem is it was kind of marred with controversy. And there's a big controversy with a guy named Connor Stallions, who was a Michigan staff, stealing the signs for those opponents, ostensibly to provide that information to Michigan players and coaching staff to make those games easier to win. Brand of football, and they were able to finally take that and beat their nemesis, I think 3 times in a row, Ohio State, and then win 2 consecutive, I want to say 2 or 3 consecutive Big Ten championships, go to 3 straight college football playoffs, and then win a national championship last year, right? So, but a lot of people, Ohio State fans mainly, and a lot of other people feel like Michigan would not have been able to do that had they not had Connor Stallions involved in the sign stealing. And so that became a whole big thing. Obviously, and of course, there's supposedly the issue of impermissible recruiting practices during the COVID time that Jim Harbaugh was supposedly involved in. So a lot of craziness going on. Again, to me, if you win it on the field, like there's not a whole lot anybody can say. Like they could say, okay, we're going to vacate the wins. They could say we're going to take back the trophy, blah, blah, blah. But everybody who watches college football or has any rooting interest in college football saw the Michigan Wolverines develop their program over time, go out there, be the best team last year, 15-0, and win the national championship. Now, that said, a lot of people have a lot of different feelings on this Michigan scandal thing. I've talked to a lot of different people about it. My guy John Kennedy from the Always Irish Notre Dame Football Podcast, he and I were talking about it. He detests Michigan, obviously, as a diehard Notre Dame fan. And one of the things he was saying was that even if after the Connor Stallions, was removed from the program, Michigan kept on winning. But his argument is we can never properly identify how much the quote unquote cheating prior to his dismissal helped build up the confidence, helped build up the momentum, helped build up the recruiting over time that led Michigan to be in a position to end up winning that national championship. I don't put a whole lot of credence in that. One of the things I heard last year, I think Deion Sanders, coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, Coach Prime, one of the things he said when he was asked about it was, listen, you can know all the plays, but at the end of the day, offensively, and this is not an exact quote, but offensively, you got to go out there and execute. Defensively, you got to stop it. So you can know all the plays, but you still have to go out there and do it. And I think there is something to that, right? So anyway, back to Ryan Langford, my college football analyst. The reason I bring him up, I asked him about this last season, and he said basically everyone steals signs, right? Now, did Michigan apparently with Connor Stallions take that to a whole nother level? Yeah, maybe so, right? Maybe so. But everyone steals signs. And Brady Quinn, former Notre Dame football quarterback, former NFL quarterback, and now one of the hosts of the Two Pros and a Cup of Joe show on Fox Sports Radio every weekday morning. I remember him talking about this last season. One of the things he said, again, not an exact quote, he says that when he was about 10 years old or so, he had 10 or 11, he had an uncle or a cousin or somebody who was a coach at some higher level, maybe high school or something like that. And he remembers that the guy would literally give him binoculars and a pen and a pad and put him in the stands and tell him to watch what the other team was doing, i.e. steal their signs, write it down to be able to identify what they're doing. Everyone steals signs. Ryan Langford told me everyone steals signs, to different levels. So this whole business of, they stole signs, that's the only way they could win. I think that's absurd. I really do. And at the end of the day, it's just, look, I'm a Notre Dame fan as well, which means I'm not a huge Michigan fan. I am happy Michigan beat Alabama, so that's great. But I'm not a huge Michigan fan as a result. But at the end of the day, Jim Harbaugh went there. He built the program. The program started falling off towards the end of his tenure. He rebuilt the program. He got some help from his brother, John Harbaugh, in terms of defensive scheme and defensive coaching. And he was able to build the program the way he wanted it. And eventually they crossed over that bridge and they went and they won a national championship. Like, that's all there is to it. So now the NCAA, which is pretty much a toothless tiger, they're out here and they want to do show cause and they want to threaten to suspend people and this, that, and the third. And I think it's really ridiculous. So anyway, I was listening to the ESPN College Football Game Day podcast earlier today, and they were talking about this very topic. So I have something here, and I wanted to go ahead and I'll play that for you and then come back and talk a little more about it.
Committee on Fractions ultimately is going to have to come up with a decision. Remember, they did push back against Michigan last year when they tried to negotiate a resolution. They said, no. They basically didn't think Jim Harbaugh was going to get punished enough, and they thought him lying, misleading, whatever he did, whatever jargon you want to use for his obstinance towards this process, which has continued since he went to the NFL. They said, no, that's not enough, and they kind of had to table that. So Moore is ultimately, his fate is going to go there. As a level 2, I would think ultimately that gets distilled to a short suspension of some kind. That is, it could be no suspension, it could be a short suspension. I don't think we're looking at anything. It's hard, if you look at what happened in the college basketball scandal, it's hard to have a significant. You've really got to break some rules to do that. He obviously allegedly deleted a thread of 52 text messages. It does later say he turned them over. If the text messages had "Hey Connor, what's Ohio State's run sign" or whatever, it would probably be noted in here, and it's not. So I think that he's in here for the act of failing to cooperate, basically. And then eventually he did. And you can read through the lines here and say, seemingly there was no giant smoking gun, or they would have noted the smoking gun. And there would have been a level 1. The other 4 coaches who are gone, who are accused of failing to cooperate, have level 1s. So that nuance makes me think, if you're going to read the tea leaves for what this independent Star Wars bar is going to decide, it would come down to likely some type of short suspension. But as we've said for the years, Reese, the NCAA, they kind of make it up as they there's no they point you to this penalty matrix, but the cases never follow the penalty matrix. So it's really hard to do that. So that's track 1 here, and then track 2 here that I think the fans want to know, the people on Twitter have reacted to, is, will there be a postseason ban?
No.
Correct. That's basically
and there's going to be no vacating of anything.
Correct. That is 1,000%.
I'm not going to pretend that they didn't win it.
So the vacating thing, I can say with full-throated confidence, because that would involve, they take away wins when it involves when it involves players who aren't eligible.
Yeah.
And there are no players implicated in here directly by name or anything. So that, looking back, there will be nothing. Looking forward, you could say technically some type of postseason ban is on the table. The actual likelihood of that happening, considering Tennessee, considering the political climate, considering the NCAA has basically come out and said, we don't want to punish teams. And again, I called a bunch of people who traffic in this world, and they were all like, we'd be shocked, we'd be shocked, we'd be shocked. So again, it comes down to a room full of people and how they react. So you can never 100% predict it, but I would say, looking at this, it would seem unlikely. What is likely is Michigan cuts a big old check.
You heard a whole lot there, a whole lot of word salad. And my whole thing is this, 1, Jim Harbaugh has already gone off to the NFL. and it's unlikely that he's going to return to college. I mean, maybe he has a bad stretch in the NFL, which again is unlikely because he's had success as a head coach everywhere he's been, right? Remember, last time he was in the NFL, he was there 4 years, and 3 of those years he was in the NFC Championship game, and 1 of those years he was in the Super Bowl. So Jim Harbaugh is really an outstanding coach. We know that given any level of talent and the opportunity to build out his team the way he wants, he is going to have a successful program, right? And he's already done it, right? He drafted arguably the best offensive lineman in the draft this year, Joe Alt, left tackle out of Notre Dame. He's going to put him at right tackle now because he's already got Rashawn Slater, one of the best young left tackles in the league, to protect Justin Herbert's blind side, So he's already working on building that elite O-line. You know, he's going to run the football. So you've got that. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, he builds programs the way he wants to. He's got pass rushers on the other side with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, and he's got Derwin James, who's a run stopper. He's brought in Greg Roman to run his offense, and coincidentally, Greg Roman ran his offense when he was in San Francisco last time with Colin Kaepernick and Alex Smith. Had a lot of success there. And Greg Roman also ran the offense in Baltimore for one of Lamar Jackson's MVP years, had a lot of success there. And coincidentally, again, the Baltimore connection continues because he's got J.K. Dobbins and Gus, can't remember his last name, but 2 of the running backs that were in Baltimore. So you can tell Jim Harbaugh is going to play the type of football that Jim Harbaugh is going to play. And the assumption is that he is going to have some level of success in the NFL. Is he going to win a championship? We will see. He seems to have pretty much most of everything he wants, but we'll see if he's able to take it to the level of winning the championship. But regardless, he's going to have success. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because for whatever reason, the NCAA, like I mentioned earlier, pretty much a toothless tiger, has for some reason they have waited for Jim Harbaugh to leave college football to issue the show cause and say basically if he comes back, he could be suspended for a year, no matter what team he goes to coach, based on the quote unquote infractions that allegedly happened, the impermissible recruiting, buying a recruit a cheeseburger, and having involvement with a recruit during a recruiting dead period in COVID. And then, of course, his quote unquote involvement in the spying with Connor Stallion. And then you heard reference to a string of 52 text messages being deleted. Now that allegedly was Sharon Moore, Michigan's current head coach, who I guess the day the Connor Stallions report came out last year, he allegedly deleted a string of 52 text messages. Now, as they also said in that clip we just played, they deleted the 52 text messages, but if there was something that was deliberately or majorly incriminating, then we would have heard about it in the report, but there wasn't. So it's like, okay. Now, again, we know the Buckeye fans, they're looking for something because they just can't believe that Michigan is going to beat them 3 years in a row. I mean, how about they beat Michigan a number of years in a row, and these things kind of go back and forth in terms of like a seesaw or teeter-totter, whatever you want to call it, over time, right? You have a few years that are going to be in Michigan's favor. You're going to have some years that's going to be in Ohio State's favor. This is how rivalries work, right? This is how rivalries work. And so Michigan did their thing en route to winning their championship. So, like, obviously, the Ohio State fans, they are going to be looking for something. Maybe the Notre Dame fans are going to be looking for something. Maybe a lot of people on the whole who don't like Harbaugh or don't like Michigan in college football are going to be looking for something because they need some explanation as to why a team and a coach that play old school football and don't necessarily get a lot of the fastest, biggest, strongest recruits were able to build their program out in a way that allowed them to win a national championship and beat the greatest coach of all time in college football history, arguably the greatest coach of all time college football history, Nick Saban, and the resident bully on the block, Alabama Crimson Tide, on the way to that championship. So, people are always looking for reasons. They're looking for excuses. But at the end of the day, for me, I'm like, yeah, I get it. There's a lot, and it seems like, okay, yeah, they were cheating. They were doing this or doing that. But, at the end of the day, even after Connor Stallions was dismissed and if they were doing anything and they stopped doing it, they were still winning, right? So, and here's the other thing. Let's say they were cheating because allegedly other teams in the Big Ten knew about it. So if you knew about it, why didn't you change your signals? Why didn't you do something different? So if you knew that they were watching you and they had your signals and they had your signs, you could have used that to your advantage, right? You could have made them think you were doing one thing and then did something totally different. Change your signals, change your signs. What's the problem here? At what point are we going to take some personal responsibility for what went down here? Everybody steals signs. We know it. So again, if you know that they stole your signs or you believe they stole your signs, change your signs, do something different. How about Michigan did what they do? They lined up, they smacked you in the mouth on both sides of the line of scrimmage, whether it was defensive line or whether it was offensive line. They ran the football down your throat and they did what they wanted to do. That's all it was to it. They weren't running a bunch of fancy gadget plays and all that stuff. They were out there playing physical, old school football. And if you couldn't stop that, or you were upset about it, Michigan never, I don't believe, under Harbaugh had a top 10 recruiting class. So you couldn't stop that. You knew that they were supposedly and allegedly cheating and stealing your signs. Well, I don't know. At some point, that sounds like a you problem because you could have done something to adjust for that. But that's just me. All right. That's the Michigan topic. I really wanted to get on here and talk about that. It wasn't going to take too long, and I don't think it did. So what I'm going to do now, if there's anybody listening who has anything to say about it, go ahead and I'm going to open up the phone lines 904-219 8264 904-219-8264. Give me your thoughts on Michigan. What you think about the way it went down? Do you think they cheated? What impact, if they did, do you think that had on them winning the national championship? Let me hear what you got to say. Again, that's 904-219-8264. Let's get it. Okay. All right. So it looks like we're probably not gonna have any calls on that. Definitely wanted to get those thoughts out there regarding Michigan and the scandal, but that's cool. So all right. I don't think this one is gonna be too long. But let's go ahead and talk about the other topic that we had here on the show tonight, Julius Peppers and Michael Jordan. Why am I talking about Julius Peppers, NFL Hall of Famer, recently inducted NFL Hall of Famer, and Michael Jordan, who is a guy who is not even in the same sport? Now, this is interesting, right? So, young disciple, I don't know if you're still here. This is why you don't do shows every time someone says LeBron the GOAT. Um, I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, why would I, right? The reason why I don't do shows when people say LeBron is the GOAT is very simply because I think it's a ludicrous statement. I don't believe it, and there's a lot of evidence proving that he's not. It's that simple, right? Anyone who's been around watching basketball long enough to have seen Michael Jordan and understand what Michael Jordan was and understand what Michael Jordan faced knows that Michael Jordan is the GOAT. As well as if you look at the two players and you identify skill set, right? So it's not just okay, one has 6 rings and no finals losses. No, it's not just that. It's not just that the other has more points than anyone who's ever played the game of basketball, which is freaking incredible. No, it's not just that. It's not just that one has played 21 going on 22 years and is still playing at a higher level than anyone we've seen who has played this long. No, it's not just that. It's not just that the other has 10 scoring titles. No, it's not just that. It's when you put it all together, right? When I look at the GOAT argument or when I evaluate a player, it's not just stats. It's not just longevity. It's not just peak. It's not just accomplishments. It's not just championships. It's not just awards. You have to put everything together. You got to look at both sides of the ball, offense, defense. You got to look at skill set, what the player can do with and without the ball. Again, on offense and defense, you have to look at awards, right? MVPs, right? For instance, what Jordan has 5, LeBron has 4. You look at those things. You look at stuff like defensive player of the year, other accolades. You look at first team all NBAs or all NBA selections. You look at all-star selections. You look at all these things. So championships, skill set, awards, accolades, statistical production. And everyone likes to talk about and there's no shade on LeBron for me to say this, but everyone loves to talk about how, LeBron has scored all these points and he scored more than Jordan and he assisted more than Jordan, but they don't look at the context of that, right? So he assists more than Jordan. Absolutely, he does. Does that mean he's actually a better passer than Jordan? No, that's not what that means. For instance, Michael Jordan played in the triangle for, when did he get Phil Jackson as his coach? 1988, right? So from 1988 until 1998, 10 years of his career, he played in the triangle. Anyone who knows anything about basketball knows that the triangle offense does not facilitate anybody getting big assist numbers. That's just a fact. There's nobody you can point to that played in the triangle offense, I think, that's ever averaged over 7 assists per game. It just doesn't happen, right? The way that offense works, it doesn't allow for people to rack up big assist numbers. But people are going to look and say, oh, LeBron's a much better passer than Jordan because Jordan averaged 5.5 assists for his career. LeBron averaged 7.5 assists for his career. Okay. LeBron's got the ball a lot more. LeBron has to play a certain way. He has to have certain type of players around. Okay, cool. But all that is great, right? People are going to look and say, well, LeBron scored more points than Jordan. Okay, cool. Michael Jordan played 15 years, I believe, right? He played 15 years. LeBron had to get into his 18th season before he passed Michael Jordan in scoring. So, like, is he really a better scorer? Yeah, he scored more points, but he also played in an era that facilitates scoring, right? There's no question about that, right? The defense is totally different, if not non-existent. We know, for example, if you go back and you look for Stu Jackson, former vice president of the NBA, or vice president of player ops for the NBA, he makes the comments back in like 2004 about the rules changes having the desired effect and basically opening up offense for offensive players and taking away some of the defenders' abilities to do certain things, right? This was done by design in the NBA. So this is not me being a hater. Like, this stuff is fact and easily verifiable, right? So again, I continue to make the same analogy. If in the year 2000, I run 2 miles and I run it in 16 minutes, a good solid time. If in the year 2010 you run 2 miles, but you run it downhill while I ran it flat, of course you're going to have a faster time. Like, if you are working under conditions that make it easier for you to do certain things, are you really better? We can't really say that, right? I mean, it seems like common sense, but maybe not. So anyway, back to Julius Peppers. Why did I bring up Julius Peppers? Because Julius Peppers over the weekend was one of 2 all-time elite pass rushers in the National Football League that was inducted into the National Football League Hall of Fame. And Julius Peppers, he played most of his career for the Carolina Panthers. He played a little bit of time in Chicago and Green Bay, and then he went back to Carolina at the end, right? And so again, he's one of the all-time great. What's up? It's not that serious. Good to see you, bro. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case, right? And I think part of it is not necessarily all to blame on them. A lot of them are younger, so they didn't see earlier iterations of the NBA, so they don't understand what it was and what players back then had to go through, right? For instance, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to tell you that James Harden is better than Mitch Richmond, and that's absolutely absurd. And then you're going to have a lot who, when you say that, they're going to say, who's Mitch Richmond, right? So they're making commentary and they don't even have the information to be able to effectively assess what you're saying. But anyway, Julius Peppers, defensive end, played a good percentage of his career in Carolina. He finished his career with 159.5 sacks. That's crazy. 52 forced fumbles. And he had a high in 2008 of 14.5 sacks. So one of the better pass rushers of all time, right? And so Julius Peppers gets inducted into the Hall of Fame over the weekend. And it was very interesting because he had interesting comment to make. Now, remember, Julius Peppers is an all-time great football player, correct? All-time great football player. Now, that said, let's hear the commentary that he made that actually made me come up with this topic. Check it out.
So many people have helped me get to this stage in my family and in my football life. And while I can't mention all of you, just please know that I'm grateful. First, I want to thank Coach Mack Brown and Coach Donnie Thompson for coming to Bailey, North Carolina and making me realize that Chapel Hill is where I needed to be. And my thanks go to my head coach, Carl Torbush, who we lost last year, and my basketball coach, Billy Guthridge. They were great coaches and great men. And this ain't in my speech, but I'm gonna say it anyway. While I'm talking about Chapel Hill and North Carolina, and I know this is the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I ain't gonna sit up here and act like my idol and one of the reasons that I went to Chapel Hill is not in the building. The GOAT, His Airness, Michael Jordan. MJ, I wanna thank you for the inspiration and the memories. Love you, big bro.
Okay, so did y'all hear what Julius Peppers had to say there? My idol, inspiration, one of the reasons I went to North Carolina. Julius Peppers, he could have went probably anywhere in the country, right? He could have went pretty much anywhere he wanted to go. He chose North Carolina. Why? Michael Jordan. Now, Julius Peppers, let's see. Julius Peppers was a professional athlete from 2002 all the way to 2018, right? That's following his time in college at Carolina. So my question to you is this. Do you think that Julius Peppers has never met LeBron James? Do you think Julius Peppers has never seen LeBron James play? You think he's never been around him? You think he's never been around other athletes that know LeBron? And remember, Julius Peppers was a pretty good basketball player as well because he played basketball also at North Carolina. You can't be a bum playing basketball at North Carolina, right? If you play for the Tar Heels, if you hoop for the Tar Heels, you can hoop. And so I bring that up to say, do you think Julius Peppers doesn't know anything about basketball? He does. But yet, he says it in front of everybody. He says, yeah, this is the Football Hall of Fame, but guess what? Michael Jordan, the GOAT. Why do you think he says that? You think he said that just to say that? You think he said that just to say that? But people act like when I say that Michael Jordan is the GOAT, that I hate LeBron. No, I don't hate LeBron. I really don't care, honestly. But the fact is, again, if you are familiar with basketball, or if you've been around long enough to have watched earlier eras and iterations of the game, and you saw what it was that Jordan was able to do and what he went through and what he was able to still accomplish, you will see the difference between him and LeBron, and it's on a number of fronts. I mean, realistically, if you just look at the skill set, LeBron is not there. And that's no slight on LeBron, right? Most people would have him as a top 5 player of all time. I don't, whatever. That's a different discussion. But most people would. And the question is, out of all the players that have played in the NBA, I think it's about 4,500 or 4,700. Why is that not good enough to be top 5? Why? Because you need to keep telling us, LeBron, that you're the GOAT and you're this and you're that. But the point I'm trying to make, this is not about slighting LeBron. This is about, we have someone who played a completely different sport, right? At least on the professional level. Made the Hall of Fame in a completely different sport on the professional level. Took time out of his speech to say something that wasn't even in his speech and to shout out the guy that most people think is one of the greatest athletes of all time. Now, do I think he's the greatest team sport athlete of all time? No, I actually don't. I do believe wholeheartedly he's the greatest basketball player of all time, and that's an easy argument to make. I do actually believe that Wayne Gretzky is the greatest North American team sport athlete ever. And basically the reason for that is there's nobody or almost no one who's going to argue with you that Wayne Gretzky isn't the greatest hockey player of all time. Meanwhile, there are people for whatever reason who will argue with you that Michael Jordan isn't the greatest basketball player of all time, whether they think it's Big O, whether they think it's Wilt, whether they think it's Kareem, whether they think it's LeBron, right? There are people who will argue that. Most people in their right mind who know anything about hockey are not going to argue who's the greatest hockey player of all time. It's the great one, Wayne Gretzky. So I believe that he is the greatest player in the greatest athlete in the history of North American team sports. And then after that, maybe you argue for Tom Brady, maybe 7 championships. You know, he's got more championships on his hands than any single franchise. He's got 7 of those things. And of course, he's got basically every quarterback record there is. And Patrick Mahomes may come get all those, but for right now, Tom Brady is, hands down the best. But that doesn't take anything away, from Michael Jordan. But the point I'm trying to make here is you had a guy in a completely different sport who took the time out of his speech to make sure that he shouted out Michael Jordan and let everyone know who the GOAT is. Now, that said, let's get to some people that are in Michael Jordan's own sport, right? So Dwayne Wade is, yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. The thing about Gretzky, and again, that's no shot on Michael Jordan. It's just that think about it. If you know anybody who knows anything about hockey, ask them who's the greatest hockey player of all time. I think I would be willing to say 95 out of 100 people are going to tell you that Wayne Gretzky is the greatest hockey player of all time. I don't think, as much as we believe that Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time, I don't think at this point 95 out of 100 people are going to tell you that it's Michael Jordan. I really don't. So I just look at it that way. And then, of course, the statistical dominance, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, back to where I was going with this. So Dwayne Wade played with LeBron James for years. Those guys are super tight. They came into the league at the same time. They won, 2 championships together, went to 4 finals together, right? But Dwayne Wade, supposed to be his banana boat brother and all that, this is the same dude that will tell you with no compunction that Michael Jordan's the greatest of all time. And he also talks about how at the 75th anniversary celebration, you had all those guys there, all the goats of goats: Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Oscar Robertson, all those guys, Shaq, and Hakeem Olajuwon, all these guys. But when Michael Jordan walked in the room, it got quiet. It was just different. Everybody knew it was different, and the guy had walked in. It's not like that with LeBron. And again, that's no shade on him because he has had an all-time great career. He really has. Now, how he got there and how you feel about how he got there, that's a totally different thing. I'm not getting into that. But the fact is, LeBron James has had an all-time great career. And so when you look at it, it's just a totally different thing. And that's not coming from me hating Bruce, right? That's what y'all call me, hating Bruce. But that's not coming from me. That's coming from his own people, right? Yeah, it's not that serious. I do remember that. You're right. Yep. In the early 90s, Wayne Gretzky, Bo Jackson, and Michael Jordan cartoon. That's crazy. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that in years. Great one. Yeah, so, it just shows you how different Michael Jordan is and what type of level that guy is on versus, the others. And so it's not taking a shot. It's just demonstrating that you don't hear people from other sports taking time out of their Hall of Fame induction to mention LeBron. You just don't. Again, LeBron, all-time great career, but you just don't. There's just a difference. Who was it that said there's levels to this? I can't remember who it was that said that, but there are levels to this, and that is what it is. What up, Nino? Good to see you, man. Wade is from Chicago. I know Wade's from Chicago, but what does that mean? He also played with LeBron for 4 years, right? LeBron is his boy from jump from 2003 when they came in the league together. They banana boat homeboys. What does that mean? He's not boys with Michael Jordan. I'm sure he knows him because, obviously he's an all-time great shooting guard, an all-time great NBA player, D Wade, Hall of Famer, all that. So he knows Michael Jordan, but they're not tight like that. What does that mean, Wade's from Chicago? You're trying to make an excuse for why Wade is telling the truth that Michael Jordan is the GOAT? Really? Okay. Another one. I'm going to give you someone who's not from Chicago, right? Ray Allen came in the league in 1996, correct? Came in the league same time as Kobe. Okay, cool. So that means he caught Michael Jordan his first 3 years in the league. He caught Michael Jordan's second three-peat. And Ray Allen, he was a beast when he was young, right? So he caught Michael Jordan's second three-peat, played against him. So that was like back of his prime Michael Jordan, not old Michael Jordan, played against him. Ray Allen also played against early Kobe, played against prime Kobe, played against late Kobe, played against prime LeBron, played with prime LeBron, and played against prime LeBron, right? All those things. When they asked Ray Allen who his dream starting five is, he had LeBron coming off the bench. LeBron James did not make his dream starting five. Come on, at what point are we going to start acknowledging that, like I said, when it comes to LeBron and Michael Jordan, there's levels to this? At what point are we going to start acknowledging it? This is not hard to do. It's really not hard to do. And as soon as we stop, not we, but as soon as some people stop, as soon as you mention this thing, they go crazy and start running up and down and jumping up and down and screaming and yelling and want to attack people and freaking out and doing all this. And their LeBron defense mechanism goes up and they have to start attacking you because you're just telling it how it is. As soon as that calms down and it stops, everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. I mean, it is what it is. So anyway, my whole point here was to bring up the fact that Julius Peppers, who is now one of the greats of the greats when it comes to the National Football League, and he is in the Hall of Fame where they say the bus talk to each other at night when all the lights go out. He is forever immortalized. He took time, and this is funny because it'll never be forgotten, right? We always you can go back and look at anybody's Hall of Fame induction speech on YouTube. It'll now never be forgotten that he took time out of his National Football League Hall of Fame induction speech to stop and acknowledge the GOAT, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, Michael Air Jordan. That's got to tell you something. Now, I know for some of you out there, it's not going to tell you, but it should. All right, so yeah, that's what I got on that. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that topic right there. I'm gonna open up the phone lines 904-219-8264, 904-219-8264. If you want to call in and give me your thoughts on Julius Peppers taking time out of his National Football League Hall of Fame induction speech to bring up Michael Jordan and acknowledge that he's the greatest of all time in basketball, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're a LeBron guy and you disagree with me, I would also love to hear your thoughts. So go ahead, call in 904-219-8264. Young Disciple, I'd love to hear from you, man. I'd love to hear from you. Nino, I know I generally hear from you. It's not that serious, man. Give me a call. So I hope, Young Disciple, that this answered your original question of why I don't do shows every time someone says LeBron is the GOAT. Yeah. Because, it is what it is. But yeah, 904-219-8264. Let's get it. Excuse me. And Young Disciple, I definitely get that that's his opinion. I totally respect that. But what I'm kind of trying to demonstrate here is that, yes, that's his opinion, but you're looking at a situation where you have someone in a completely different sport who literally stopped and took the time out to tell you who the GOAT is, right? Just like we talked about Dwayne Wade and how when they were at the 75th anniversary situation, it's not that serious. The number is 904-219-8264. It's scrolling on the bottom. 904-219-8264. Yeah, it's Young Disciple. So it's just like when D Wade was talking about how at the 75th anniversary celebration, all those guys who are GOATs in their own right, those guys were there. And when Michael Jordan walked in the room, everything stopped. Think about it. You're in a room with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas and John Stockton and this guy, that guy, this guy, that guy, and everything froze when Michael Jordan walked in the room, right? It's kind of, to an extent, it's like how they said it used to be when Michael Jackson came in somewhere and people were fainting and everything froze up. Like that's how it is with Michael Jordan. Even the greatest LeBron supporters, Shannon Sharp, right? He loves LeBron, and that's cool. I respect that. He says that the first time he met Michael Jordan had an aura, he had a glow, and it looked like he was levitating, and he could barely speak. Like this is the effect that Michael Jordan has on people, even the biggest LeBron supporters. So I mean, again, this stuff has to tell you something. Like this is not normal. This is not normal. How do we ever hear people say that stuff about LeBron? Does LeBron have that effect on people? And I'm not saying that has anything to do with what someone does on the court, but what Michael Jordan did on the court is what led to him being someone of that level. But let me go ahead and take this call. Format Podcast.
How's it going, man? It's been a while.
What's going on, brother? How you doing? Good to hear from you.
I'm doing all right. I'll be brief if I possibly can, but
yeah.
When it comes to that, like the whole LeBron thing, and it's like we can't just talk about basketball with him.
Mm-hmm.
And like just think about Julius Peppers Hall of Fame speech. He deviated from what he had written down to give Jordan a shout out.
Right.
And the difference that I noticed with like a lot of these people when they talk about LeBron, it seems like they're forced to or mandated to talk about him. And when they talk about Jordan, you can tell us from how they feel about him, how he moves as a player, and things like that. There's a distinct difference on how people say how they feel about either player. Because with LeBron, you can't just stick to basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was interesting that that Peppers, took the time out to do that. It's just like, why does it bother folks? That's my thing. I don't have to say anyone because I like who I like, for whatever reason. If for me, LeBron is an all-time great player. Why is that not good enough? And if that's what other people, if that's their favorite player, that's fine. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to denigrate them to say who I like or who I prefer, who I think should go. And I think this generation don't understand that.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's not that serious, and I appreciate your call. It's definitely different, man. But I don't know. I just look at it, and I guess it really did stand out to me when I saw that, because I'm like, yo, that's crazy to think that he had to stop and take time away from what he wrote and I'm sure they only get a certain amount of time allotted for their Hall of Fame induction speeches. And so he had to stop, take a break from what he had written down to say, hey, we got to make sure we acknowledge the GOAT that's in him, And so that's crazy, and not just acknowledge that he was there, but call him the GOAT. Thank him for the inspiration. Thank him for being part of the reason that he ended up going to North Carolina, Now,
right.
That said, I'm going to be fair here and say I'm sure maybe there's some Carolina bias involved there. Obviously, MJ is the greatest Tar Heel ever, and Julius Peppers is born and raised in North Carolina, and then obviously went to Chapel Hill and so on and so forth. So I'm sure there's some level of Carolina bias there, if we want to be honest. But regardless, like, you don't see that happening for anyone else, right? I've watched a lot of Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. I've never seen them stop to deviate from their speech to acknowledge someone who plays another sport as the greatest of all time. That's all I'm saying. And so I thought it was worth mentioning and doing a quick segment on.
Yeah, I appreciate this segment. I appreciate your shows when I get a chance to see them. I haven't been able to do them Wednesdays nights, so I've been watching them after before I haven't been able to catch them live. This is the first time I'm able to catch it live.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate the support, though. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Oh, no problem. And I'll say this before I get off, man.
Yeah.
My thing is this. There's older folks who love Russell, who love Will, and stuff like that. And I used to have debates with my uncles and my older cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was like, I might have seen some of the tape on like Will and stuff like that, but I wasn't there in the time.
Right.
And see how they got down, how they played, and what they went through. So that's their opinion. They have emotions and all types of stuff invested in that. So I'm not questioning how they feel about who they feel they best play.
Right.
And that's the way I look at it. And it's a thing like we're deviating so far from that. We can just have basketball conversation.
Mm-hmm.
When you start getting into the details of people's resumes, then you want to talk about philanthropy and all this other different things that have nothing to do with basketball. It's like, let's just have a sports basketball conversation.
Yeah.
Put their stats and what they accomplished against the other person and see how they stack up.
Right. So
that's all I have to say about that. This is awkward. That's all I had to say about that, man. I'm just glad to catch you, live for a change. What were you about to say?
No, I was about to say, I was actually thinking about it, like, to your point about how you're saying you're talking to, some of your older relatives, because, and, you get that when the older guys, they're going to say, well, oh, hey, boy, you didn't see Kareem when he was young. Kareem was that boy. Yeah, absolutely. Kareem was a problem, right? And, oh, you didn't see Wilt, boy. Wilt was unbelievable. And you didn't see Big O. Big O is the greatest player I ever seen. And that's cool. It's where we might not agree with that. And we might say, okay, it's Jordan and it's Dream and it's D-Rob and it's Shaq and it's Kobe, right? Cool. But the difference with our generation, we don't have to denigrate the guys that came before. And it's weird. This LeBron generation, it's like their whole thing is they got to diss everybody. And where I'm going with this is, for instance, they say that Jordan always played against plumbers, right? Jordan beat up plumbers. That's why he won the way he did. And that's why he looked so good. So I saw a meme and it was funny. And this is their narrative, right? And it has Jordan hitting a fadeaway jump shot with Ray Allen defending, right? So that's half of the meme. The other half of the meme has Ray Allen hitting the shot that saved the series in 2014, right? In 2013. So it says, the meme says, by LeBron fans' logic, LeBron was saved by a plumber. You know what I mean? It can't be both. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
yeah. So it's just so interesting that, Jordan played against plumbers. That same plumber saved LeBron by, making arguably the biggest shot in finals history. So,
I'll add one more thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing to that because like the same uncles and cousins, some of them agree like, okay, I've seen enough to say it's the best I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I have it where they succeeded a different way. They be like, I still, Will's still my favorite, but I ain't never seen nobody like him. So it was like they can do it mutually. They can make it mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
He may not be my GOAT, but he's one of the best players I've ever seen.
Right.
And for me, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've never seen anybody to me play better than MJ. But I've seen Kobe. I've seen all these other great players. I respect their game. They're some of the best for a reason. You can appreciate that without denigrating another player.
Exactly. So, yep. But yeah, man, I appreciate you calling. It's good to hear from you, man. I'm glad you were able to catch the show, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, brother.
All right, brother. Have a good night, man. Thanks.
All right, you too.
All right, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and drop it right here. This was a quick one. Only brought in the 2 topics, and of course, I had those quick hits early in the show. But for everybody that checked in, I appreciate you. I appreciate you leaving comments in the chat. Young disciple, man, I really would love to hear from you. And I will say that even though we don't agree on the topics a lot, I appreciate you being here and I appreciate you checking out the show. So thank you for that. So everybody who tuned in, man, thanks again. And make sure you're sharing the show. Make sure you're liking and subscribing if you haven't already. And make sure, you're letting people know about it if they want to hear a different voice in the sports media world. So next show Saturday night. And hopefully I'll have the gang with me. If not, I will run it back again by myself. Also, if you watch the Man Down Sports Full Panel Fridays, I should be on that one this Friday, filling in for one of their regulars. So check me out on that. But I guess that's it. And I'm out. Peace.